Vidimo, če bo kaj. En, dva, tri, test. Do we hear each other? Can I get some thumbs up from the people that are watching at home? Is the audio level okay or not? I guess we can wait a little bit and then you can. Ne, ti se cool. Yeah, nič. I guess we are going to start. Let me check. To go. Yeah. Ne, po moje ne. English. We're gonna start. So thanks everybody for joining. Today we have a presentation about funding and how to fund your video game. And we're gonna first have a presentation by Tom. Then we will have a Q&A session. And I hope that Tom will answer as much as your question as he could. And after that, we're gonna have just more kind of like, let's say more kind of like a mingling and more drinking and relaxed ambience. Yeah, and first I'll just introduce Tom. I know him from my faculty years. He was one of the best tutors, and then he went to work with Celtra as one of the data scientists there. Yes. And then he had his crazy idea and quit his job, and now he started his own startup accelerator. Yes, exactly. And he's mostly focusing on the tech and gaming and game dev. And today he's going to talk something about that. And yeah, I'll just give the word to Tom.
Thank you, Rock. So I hope by the end of the talk today, it's going to last 20 to 30 minutes. Those of you at home will find the time to rush here and have a drink afterwards, okay? So see you in 30 minutes if you have the time. Hey guys. Okay, thanks Rock for the introduction. Now let's step on this side so you can hear me better from home. We're going to talk about how to get funding for your video game company. These are two distinct cases, and we'll also look at them today as two distinct cases and present when to go for one and when to go for the other. It's actually your arbitrary decision, and we'll see why and how. A little bit. Let me just. Yes. Let me just refocus the window. Okay, good. Okay, a very quick intro about me. Rock already told a couple of things. Thanks, Rock. So that you know why am I even, let's say, eligible to talk about fundraising, about funding, and about video games. I regard myself as a startup business developer. So my day-to-day job is help new companies, new entrepreneurs, or existing entrepreneurs starting a new company into making it successful, okay, in the early stages of startup companies. I'm a mentor, I'm a consultant, I'm an all-round analyst, and I'm an all-round manager. With all-round analyst, I mean I can do data analysis, business analysis, efficiency analysis, team analysis, whatnot. Okay, market analysis, all around. Manager, the same thing. Project managing, product managing, people manager, and company manager. All those stuff. I did it, I know it, I know how to consult on that. My big passion since forever are games, and that's why also I'm standing here today and talking about this. I learned how to write and speak English when I was 5, 6 years old by playing video games. I learned how to write the first scripts when in MS-DOS I was setting up the IPX protocol to play games with my dad. And I learned how to program when I was at the beginning or end of primary school by implementing some logic for a mobile robot. And in the second grade of high school, I implemented my first artificial intelligence algorithms by playing Operation Flashpoint. If some of you know it, it's a precursor to Arma. It's a military simulation game, and the AI was not, let's say, smart enough for me, so I kind of coded a better AI when I was in high school. And this eventually led me, through my studies of computer science, to finish a PhD in artificial intelligence. And actually, the algorithms that I developed, I applied them on games. I did very similar stuff like AlphaGo. Okay, if you know AlphaGo and AlphaZero and this kind of algorithm, this is very similar to what they did. And games were my benchmarks. After finishing the studies here at the faculty, PhD in Ljubljana, I went into the industry. As Rok said, I started as a data scientist, very engineering role. And then I progressed to the role of a kind of business consultant based on data. So I was at Centra, advertising technology. I was the co-founder of the business intelligence data science department. And in the 4 years, we expanded the department from 2 to 10 people. And I took management, I took the direction and the strategy for anything data-driven in the whole company. And I was advising the top management how to make better business decisions based on data. And then, like Rok said, new challenges, new motivation, new passion comes to the horizon. Since the beginning of this year, I quit the manager and director role at Celtra, and I'm now building with a couple of partners. One of them might join today, the Reveris, which is a startup accelerator, and we are actually now working with a number of new entrepreneurs and actually putting all this passion and all this knowledge back into action. I won't go heavy into what Reveris is, just so that you have an idea, because we'll be talking about fundraising, and since this is an accelerator, which is an elementary part of the fundraising ecosystem, we scout for opportunities. This means opportunities for investment or opportunities to develop businesses. We analyze those opportunities. There is a threshold you must meet in terms of maturity of the idea and maturity of the people involved. If you go through these thresholds, we help you develop the business and we coach the team. And when this comes to the next milestone, the next maturity step of a lifetime of a company, we help getting the investments, the fundraising, okay? And we have a network of partners that is bringing in the money. We have a network of partners that are bringing in additional services if needed. For example, I'm not a legal expert. We have partners who can provide heavy legal consulting. We have partners who can provide consulting how to open a company in US or in Germany or anything of that sort. We are heavily focused on software as a service, so basically anything software today, okay? Technology, and with this I mean deep tech in the sense of machine learning, artificial intelligence, because quite some of us have background in that, and into the video game industry. These are the three verticals that we are attacking and scouting and analyzing and developing. Some of this terminology here, so lean development, customer centricity, data-driven product management, will come back in 5 minutes later. Just a bit of this part, let's say. So since February, we're active. We spoke to more than 100 startup teams or project teams trying to build their own idea, their own business. Of those 100, we actively engaged with around 15 of them. And of those 15, with 5, we recently brought to the first batch in front of investors. So we were comfortable enough to present them further to investors. And with 5 of them, we are working today further on. And here is me and Vuk, the 2 main partners for full-time. The remaining 10 members of Reveris are part-time consultants, and they are either directors at bigger companies or freelancers consultants, or they have their own companies. They are entrepreneurs. That said, enough of the credentials, okay? Let's get into the topic. So the topic today is how to get money for your game or game company, okay? And the first question is, why getting money in the first place? So why fundraise? Why go seek money? And because you need some commitment, you need to negotiate, you need to give maybe a part of revenue or a part of equity, something you must give. So it's a complication, okay? But why do you go seek money? And there is only one real reason. The second one is actually a result of the first one. The only reason you go seek money is to speed up what we're doing. You need 1 million. If you're in the right job sector, you can get 1 million in a lifetime. In 20 years, you will have 1 million in your bank account. Do you want to wait 20 years to get 1 million? Maybe not. That's why you go fundraise. Okay. So to speed you up, and this goes not only in the term of a lifespan of 20 to 30 years, this also goes in the term of 5 years of building a company. You might be able to build it yourself in 5, 6, or 7 years. If you get the money at the right time, you might be able to achieve the same thing in 1 or 2 years or 3 years. Depends. So the point is to speed up, and this speed up comes to the second point. There are opportunities out there in the market, in the stuff that you're building, and you're trying to seize that opportunity. And 20 years might be too long of a time to seize that opportunity. Opportunities don't last usually the whole lifetime. That's why to do some things in life, there is no other choice than go get the money and build the thing now, exploit the opportunity now. So when is the right time? And now I'm talking about you personally and you involved in your own project, okay? First thing is you should know how to spend that money quickly and efficiently. So 2 points, quickly and efficiently. It doesn't matter if you get 1 million or 100,000 that sits on the bank account. The investor doesn't want that, you don't need that. We said getting money is about speeding things up, not sitting on the bank account, okay? So you must be able to spend that money quickly, whatever quickly means. Efficiently means that you don't throw it down the drain, right? That actually you spend it for the right reasons and that you spend it to actually speed up your growth and deliver on your promises to whoever gave you the money, okay? So this is about let's say, timing when you know you can do that. And you are, let's say, knowledgeable enough to formulate something like that. The next step is to be able to explain that, okay? Some people, explaining your ideas, your visions, your plans, and what you're going to do with the money, it's not such a trivial task. These things live in your head, it's great, but you need to explain this in 5 minutes to a person who's going to decide about millions, So it's not that simple to be able to explain what you want to do with that. The third point is understand the implications, or I would put it vice versa. Set your expectations straight. Of those 100 companies, 100 startups that we kind of already talked to in this year, around 20 of them are from the gaming industry, okay? Either video game development, either some technology for video games, or esports. Let's say more than 10 are game development studios. So when you ask an investor for money, they will ask you how much of the company you're willing to give them, okay? And this is based on how much you value your own company. And people come with no revenue, with a team barely assembled, and they say my company is worth 10 million. It doesn't exist. It's just, full stop, come back in 2 years when you know your expectations, okay? So the thing is, understand the implication this brings, understand the expectations this brings, okay? And the last point is, this is, let's say, a technicality, but you always want to get money just at the right moment when you're about to run out of money, okay? Because if you don't need it, don't go get it. And push it to the last point in time where you can prove as much as possible success, traction, customers, team, features, whatever. Push it to the very last, before you go get the money. But don't overexpand the time in terms of years. Just do as much as you can, and when the balance hits 0, this is the day you want to get the cash injection, okay? But in reality, you should start 3 to 6 months before, because you won't get cash from today to tomorrow, okay? So it's a mix. It's a mix. But you can bet your stakes. You can go today to an investor and say, in 3 months, this is what I will achieve, and on these terms, we will make the deal. And the guy might say yes, okay? But this means in 3 months, when you go there, if you're not on your promise, then you're out, right? So it's on you. You can go today and say, on today's achievement, we can make the deal, or in 3 months. It's your arbitrary decision where you want to place your bets. Okay, what are the options? And here it's not just the options about fundraising, but are the options in general how to get money for what you're building or what you're doing. The default one, the too often default one in the region here is bootstrapping. Many people go bootstrap. So here I won't go into the, let's say, the lens of what are the issues of the whole region, okay? But the thing is, if you go bootstrapping just because you're not comfortable with talking to investors, or because you're not comfortable with talking to anyone besides your technical team, or because you're not comfortable with learning about how investment works, then these are the wrong reasons why you are bootstrapping, okay? Know your options, know which one is the best one, find help for each of the ones if you're not knowledgeable about, and then make an educated decision whether to bootstrap or to not. It is a valid decision, but oftentimes it's taken as the default, and it's highly suboptimal. Okay. After bragging someone about bootstrapping, what's the thing? It's self-funding yourself and then selling as fast as possible before you run out of money, of course. So hopefully that you start generating revenue, at least for you or your team. The bigger it is, however big it is, and start selling as soon as possible. Crowdfunding, okay. So today's talk is mostly about publishers and investors and loans or something in between, okay, but I will list them all. Crowdfunding, many people think that crowdfunding is kind of market research or the first channel where you will try to build your community. It's not the one, it's not the other. It's literally a channel to bring in money when you already have a community and when you already did your market research. Okay, so if you went to crowdfunding for any other reason, you did it the wrong way. So you must have a community and you must invest a lot into a crowdfunding campaign in the hopes of getting back out of it. Okay, so don't do crowdfunding just because, I will see if there is interest. You're doing it for the wrong reason. Grants. Grants are great. There are on a European level grants, there are on a national level. In Slovenia, not so much. We have the Center za Kreativnost, CZK, which has some grants. I think it's up to 50K. It's more like 20, 30K. We have them in Slovenia. Croatia is really strong in grants, okay? And I know quite a couple of companies that live off grants. The thing with grants is they are often for a specific purpose or a specific niche. So you must be aware not to tailor your vision, your desires to the grant itself. Because then you're not building your own vision, you're building what the government is handing out money for. So you are changing what you want to do just to get some money, basically. But if you just want to get some money, you can go, get employed somewhere or start freelancing. So keep in mind, grants can be a double-edged sword. If you want to live just off that, it's not the right way. Grants are always meant for you to develop to a certain stage of the things that you're already doing. If a grant suits you well, great. If you need to wiggle a little bit, okay. If you need to wiggle a lot, you're either not going to get it, because you don't have the references, or it's going to take a ton of time for you to prepare that, and it will defocus you, or it will just throw you off. Okay, now we're going into the more, let's say, bigger and standard world of getting funding. Publishers. Publishers in the game industry, they give you money for individual games. The main purpose of a publisher is the input is a game, and the output is revenue of that one game. And this is the unit of operation a publisher works on. If you get a really good relationship with a publisher, you might get a better deal, you might get a continuity of cooperating with them, but still their unit of work is a game, okay? And that's the main difference between publishers and investors. I will jump a little bit down to investors. The unit of the economical unit of an investor is not a game, it's a company, okay? So when you're going to an investor, you're pitching a company. When you're going to a publisher, you're pitching a game or a series of games or anything along those lines. So the thing with publishers is they're highly specialized for their own niches. They're highly specialized for the video game industry. They, besides bringing in money, they bring in also a lot of know-how. And not necessarily just to teach you know-how. usually they don't teach you because they don't have the time to teach you, but they just complement what knowledge you're missing in the team with the talent that they have employed. Okay, so with their team members, marketing, distribution, usually it's those two, and community management. Those three are the main, usually complementary things the publisher brings in, because a technical development team usually doesn't have these three skill sets. Okay, so the publisher will lock you on individual games, will lock you on the revenue of that game, will lock you on the IP. So who's the owner of the intellectual property that you built? And this is a critical question which we'll also address a couple minutes later. And these are mostly the things that the publisher is concerned with. Okay, and if you deliver on a good games, they will have a good relationship with you. They will get back, you will get back, and then it's a whole story about publishing and how to get a good deal out of that. We won't go into that. So it's basically money and know-how to distribute, sell, build a community, market your game. That's it. And a lot of knowledge about the industry. If you go for a publisher, go for, again, publishers that are close to what you do. The first thing is do your homework, see which you are eligible for or not, and pick those ones. And also calculate your odds of getting in and to what level you must develop your games before you can even talk to them. We won't go into such details. Before going to investor, I will stop also at loans. So loans could work kind of as publishers, except putting away the know-how, okay? There are already some funds, some game funds that give you loans on a same deal as a publisher, but they give you just the money, okay? The money to publish a game, okay? And they don't give you the know-how. And they just operate as a bank, so to say, and you give them back in revenue. There are even banks that give you, so like classical bank, Société Générale is one of the banks that already is giving out loans to game developers when they come with the right set of metrics and data about that one game. A bank might give you a loan and you pay them back with the interest, okay? So loans is really just getting the money now and paying back with interest. And usually it could be for a game, it could be for a company. In the game development industry, you usually take a loan to bridge the gap for marketing, for the marketing expenses, okay? Investors, the last point, and this one where I'm also most knowledgeable in, and the one that we're also most frequently working with, because we are building companies, not games. We're building companies that make games, okay? And under investors, we understand venture capitalists and angels, okay? I'll say venture capital funds, VCs, okay, and angel investors. Angels are usually individuals, and the rounds, because an individual has a limited capacity, or there is not that much multi-billion people in this world, so the angels come in at a sooner stage and with smaller capacity of investment. The VCs are funds where angels gather together, or corporations gather together, and then they can actually invest also in millions and in hundreds of millions. The thing with investors is they are making a bet. They are making a bet that today your value is what it is. They give you the money to grow. They give you the money to develop faster than in 5 years. Okay, and then in a couple of years, you will increase the value of your business. I'm not talking about the number of games you produce. I'm not talking about just the revenue. So the value of your business, the value of your company, by a factor of at least 100, and you can go up to 1,000. Okay, so what does this mean? If you want to talk to investors, you need to think big. You need to go big. You need to come with them. It doesn't matter really they say you must come with a financial plan. It doesn't really matter how it goes in all the details from month to month. It matters the end number, the end figure you put after 5 years. Is it in the ballpark of hundreds of thousands? Is it in the ballpark of hundreds of millions? Then we're talking about being even eligible for talking to an investor. Why do they need to be so aggressive on the growth? Because 90% of their investments will fail. And that's why on the 10% of the investments that do not fail, they need to have massive growth to bring in the returns. And this is how the whole VC world works, okay? So the thing is, don't go even talk with investors if you don't plan to do a startup which can bring in someday, at least bare minimum 10 million per year. This is the bare minimum. We can even start that token. This is too small probably. Okay, it's more like 100 million. There must be possibility for that. Okay, and the investors. The last point here is they will, as I said, invest in a company. So they will not look at your game. They don't care about your game. They care about the added value that you're generating in the market with a series of games. The game is your product. They might care about the video game industry. They might care that you are producing games, but they don't care about that one specific game. That's the thing, you know. So you should be telling them how you're going to operate a company all around this game, how you're going to build a brand, how this one game can become a multi-international unicorn. You know, and we have several companies that live off one game, several of them, esports, several of them. You know, so it can be one game, but you're not pitching them the game. You're pitching them how this one game is the core added value, and the whole company around it is going to be built. Okay, so that's the point when you're pitching to investors. And what we see also often, that's why I'm also emphasizing this here. One of our main investment partners is Reveris Capital. This is a pretty fresh fund in Zagreb. They have 50 million to hand out in the next couple, till the end of next year. Okay, and they're the most active investor here in the region. They brought some fresh capital here because there was really little capital for startups in the region. And whenever they get an application from a game company, they send it to us, and we screen it for them. Okay, of course they screen it, but we screen it too. Okay, we are their game specialists, so to say. And half of the time, 3/4 of the time, people send them games. Okay, send them games to an investor. It's a complete mismatch. Send a game to a publisher, not to an investor. And it might be a really good game. And because we understand games better than investors do, okay, we can then talk to the startup and say, okay, now build the business around it and come back. Okay? I mean, not build it, you know, literally, but at least plan a business around it and come back. You know? And this is our role, and we help them do that. Another thing, another misconception that happens often is, and this is due to the lack of financial, let's say, business education in the, you know, game developers, really good engineers, really good designers, really good art, really good whatnot in the sense of content and the product, but there is a general lack of business education and financial education around these people. So complementing these people. And hardly there is the distinction between an investor and a publisher in the sense publisher is your way how you operate things. You might be operating a company regularly by engaging with a publisher. For every game, you might be developing a game and then engage with a publisher. You might develop another game and engage again with the publisher. This is part of your operation. It's part of you running a company, and for getting the money to market it, you always go to a publisher. It might be the same publisher, might be another publisher, doesn't matter. But it is operating a company. Okay? It's the same as getting a loan to do something faster in the sense of getting that one game done. An investor is not like this. An investor will not give you the same bucket of money every half a year. They give you the money once, and this has long-term implications. The next time they give you money, it must be 10 times more. The company must be 10 times bigger. The bucket of money will be 10 times bigger. If it doesn't happen, you failed as an opportunity to invest for an investor. You know, and oftentimes it happens. Yeah, give us the money for this one game. Give us $500,000. You know, and in 1 year we will come back with the next game. No, this is not how it works with investors. You know, go to a publisher if you need constant loans. You know. So we can go back to this later. Good. Now, how to, for any of these points that you choose, okay, but mostly publishers and investors or persuading anyone to give you money, how to do it, or let's say what are the practices that we also emphasize, encourage, and that are out there. Table stakes means the very bare minimum that you need to do. Okay, so the very bare hygienic minimum that you even have a chance of getting anything out of those people. Okay, first is I wrote here the mindset and ego. I wanted to be a little bit provocative with the ego. The ego holds for it's my baby. It's my game. Everyone who says one bad word about my game, I don't care. I'm going to go my own path. I'm going to go bootstrap for 10 years as long as it stays my game. Fine. It's a legit decision. You're never going to get an investor. Don't even go bother looking for it. You're just going to waste your time. If you want to do like this and think like this, as I said, it's completely fine. You're just not a match for an investor. It can't happen, okay? That's why I'm saying here the mindset and the ego. If you go to an investor, you must think very different. You must face criticism, tons of criticism. You will get rejected 99% of the time, okay? And your game might have to be killed 2 weeks after you pitch it to 3 people. And maybe you spend 2 years working on it. Tough luck, okay? And it is painful. It is very painful. And we see whole teams of people, 10 people working passionately for 2 years in their spare time on a storytelling RPG game. It's really good looking, you know. But you cannot, if you can't, you know, face criticism from the experts in the field. If 5 people tell you it's not unique enough, it's not different enough, it doesn't have a business around it, and you don't listen to that, you know, there's not much we can help unless you change your own mindset and your own perception. This is one thing. The second thing is the vision must be big enough. As you said, even if it's a game or if it's a company, depends who you're addressing. But even if you go to publishers, if you tell the publisher, I'm a 3-man band garage team who did this one game, would you help us? They might, okay? But if you come, look, we are a 3-man garage team who's been doing games for 10 years, and we have 10 more games in the lineup, and if we cooperate now, we might cooperate for the next 5 years because we know how to do that and that. It's a completely different story. The partner on the other end understands that the initial investment they putting in to even talk with you and screen you and analyze you will pay back further down the line, not just with that one game, okay? So vision big enough, whatever it is, series of games or companies, depends on your life decision. Video game industry is an industry where numbers are king, okay? Analytics are king. So it's a game of numbers. It's so saturated. So this is an issue, but this is the reality of things. The video game industry is so saturated that nearly no one is able to predict how a game will perform. It's basically speculation, okay? And that's why the only tangible thing that any investor, publisher, partner, when they're placing their bets in you, are any kind of numbers that you can produce. And that's why we have tons of benchmarks, tons of analytic tools, tons of marketing and acquisition and distribution, and all the platforms out there give you tons of analytics because it's purely a game of numbers. And this is when it comes back to the ego. You keep on working on a game, you try to launch it, and the soft launch, or let's say even the marketing, the pre-launch just advertisement campaign with a fake landing page shows that your number are twice or 5 times below what they should be according to the industry benchmarks, okay? You have to swallow that down and kill the project because you are literally wasting your time. You know, if you want to make a living out of making games, this is your decision. If you want to make a living, it can be just out of your passion, and that's fine. It's completely fine. So it's a game of numbers. And the last thing, whenever you go, the higher you go in the hierarchy of this, let's say, fundraising, investors, loans, publishers, the more you need to have a plan, okay? A business plan. A business plan if you're doing a company, if you're doing games, you need a strong game design document and project plan, but you need to have a plan. Not so much to show it around, but so much to be able to answer all the questions that you'll be thrown at, and not so much even to be able to answer, but to be able to execute this efficiently, okay? And this translates into, now we saw why, when, where, and how, and now how to maximize your chances of getting funding, okay? And this directly equals to how to maximize your chances of succeeding in your project, like succeeding in your game, or succeeding with your company. It again depends on your own definition of success. If your own definition of success is I'm making my passion project for whatever time I'm making, and this is what makes me happy, and it doesn't matter if 10 or 100 people play it, it's fine, and I'm happy, completely fine. It's a legit decision. It's your own personal perception. If your definition of success is that you want to be able to do this full time, or maybe not just you, maybe empower 10 more people in your team to do it, and maybe develop your backlog of 1,000 ideas one day because you will have the capacity, the money, and the resources to do so, then maybe the definition of success must be a little bit different, or quite different. You know? So the thing is, getting somebody to invest in you, to bet on you, they are masters of assessing the chances of success. So this means if you succeed at fundraising, there are higher chances that you will succeed at your business. So that's why these two things equal. And that's why the best mirror, the best reflection of whether you're doing something that makes sense or not are actually investors and publishers and those who judge you to the best of their knowledge and extent if you can make it happen. Okay? They are the ones who will tell you if you can make it happen. They're the ones who assess the chances of success better than you know. No? And two, so to succeed at your business or to succeed at your game or to succeed at making games in a sustainable way, there are four, let's say, topics or let's say areas that I would really suggest you to read at least one book. Out of each of those four topics, it might completely change the way you perceive work. It might completely open your horizons, okay? First, the first concept is design thinking. So design thinking, or said differently, okay, putting the customer, the consumer, so customer centricity, understanding that whatever we are doing as somebody who's giving out games or a company that's building games, we are catering the needs of some people. These people have desires, have wishes, have needs, have problems, and we are designing solutions that help them cater these needs. And we can quantify how much we help them, and this is called added value. Okay, this is what makes the world go round. Okay, we even have a tax on added value, and it's not made out of thin air. Okay, so the whole thing, the whole purpose of creating stuff for people is understanding what the people need, okay, and design features and products around what people need so that they can add value. And this is the first thing where every idea should start. And this involves market research and personas and exploring your customers and users and buyers and so on. When you have a clear idea what's going to add value and it's not already out there in 1,000 same ways, okay, then you should plan how to achieve that in the most efficient way possible. And this is called lean startup, lean business planning, lean product development, lean whatever you mean. Okay, lean is a buzzword, but literally means focus on the shortest and most cheapest and most efficient path to achieving your goal. Identify what are the highest risks, what are the highest barriers, try to validate them as soon as possible, as cheaply as possible, and go only that one path and just churn all the rest. And then you will think about the 10, 30,000 different ideas that you have also on top. When you have a plan around your product or game, how to execute that plan. You need to manage yourself, manage your time, manage your skills, effort, learning, execution, manage your team, business, project, whatever. So management, okay? There are ways how to drive management in a more efficient way, less efficient way, okay? The best kind of management today that there is, or that has been invented so far, is result-driven, or also you will hear management by objectives and key results. It's also a methodology that's applied. So you don't manage how things should be done, but you manage by what should be achieved. So what should be the outcome of what you do. For example, I hire a specialist for selling, a specialist for marketing. Bring me in 10,000 users. I don't care how you do it. That's your goal. That's what you're hired for. You should assess if you're capable or not. Tell me up front, and then we go. You know? So result-driven management. And the last one, which is actually the first one, but I didn't want to start with this with it. It's about you as a person. It's about you as doing what you like to do, what you love to do, and being either a freelancer or an entrepreneur, building your game studio. So whatever you're doing, you should be doing what you're passionate about. You should have passion. And if you're doing something that you're not passionate about, you should really sit down like in a philosophical manner, introspect yourself and see if this is something that you want to keep doing for the rest of your life, or at least 10 years. Because if you're going to an investor, the first thing they will judge upon are these two things. Is this person really a believer and is going to keep on biting and persevering for whatever challenges will be thrown at that person for the next 5 to 10 years, which it takes to build what he's promising to me, for me to give him money for, okay? So, and there are also books on this topic, and this is, the entrepreneurial mindset in terms of never stop, do what you love, but, be aware that everything will be thrown at you, okay? And not everyone is suitable to be an entrepreneur, and it's a completely valid point, but read one book on each of one of these topics. It might really bring you something new. Okay, and I wanted to touch, this is now the last technicality before we start concluding. So if you are operating a team of people, or if you're yourself a developing projects, so how to decide, how to, let's say, shape your vision, so what you want to do, how you want to do it, okay, and the business model around it, so that you're going to be sustainable when you try to achieve it, when you're achieving that, okay? And there are mainly two pieces of advice. The first thing is be unique. Oh, they always say that. They always say that, be unique. But what I mean with that, same as before, there are passion projects. Video game industry is so saturated with passion projects. That's why it's hard to be unique. And it's also hard to be competitive, because people are developing their game for free, and you're competing with those who are doing it for free for passion, but you want to make a living out of that on top of, and you're competing with everyone who's doing it for free, okay? And the thing is, whenever you go develop something, be unique as much as you can. Specialize yourself in a niche of the market so that you can become unique in that niche of the market. So you can really understand that type of games. On the lower end of success spectrum is when you go to an investor or a publisher, I'm doing 10 different genres of games. No, you should be focusing on one and doing 10 different games in one genre, or two maybe if there is overlap, okay? The thin red line specialization is going to make you unique in that market segment. The broader you go, the more competition you are trying to tackle, okay? And saying I will win them all doesn't win you the trust, okay? So let's say the balance is figuring out, narrowing down the market enough that you can really argument you're going to win that market. But at the same time, it must not be too narrow, because then you don't have any market. Then you don't have the room to build a $100 million company, right? And this is then the golden balance that every entrepreneur is trying to strike. How much I need to narrow down my market so that I'm still able to tackle the competition, but that the market is still big enough to make a big company, or to make the game successful. It applies to both scenarios. So, and this is the competitive edge, yeah. And the second point, IP makes all the difference. Why I'm especially emphasizing this one? What we also often see with game studios who have, let's say, those 5 to 20 people, small, medium enterprise, it's operating fine. They've been together for 5 years already. It's cool. They're doing a mix of software or game development on request and a mix of their own games. It's actually two businesses in one, two completely different businesses and business models, let's say, brought into one company, one legal entity. Why? If you are making games for others, or if you're applying to grants that are not your forte, and you're actually, again, making a game or a project because the grant says so, okay? If you're making games for others, and the IP stays theirs to distribute, to sell this. This means that you're not selling games. You're selling your expertise. Okay? You are a freelancer or you are a team of freelancers, but you're basically selling your knowledge and time, not your product. Because you don't have a product, because the IP is not yours, it's theirs. And this is not a startup. This is a small and medium business, or let's say a service business, where you can do this. You can make a company even internationally successful from consulting and doing software for developing, but you're not making your own games. You're selling your time, basically. Okay. If you turn this the other way around, you can make games when others hire you to do so. But if you retain the intellectual property on yourself, and you have a vision or a plan to resell those games down the line, or maybe white label a similar product, similar game for different customers, it's a completely different business model, because you have a product in your hand, you can sell it, you can shape it, you can do whatever you wish, because it's your property. So you didn't sell your time, you actually invested your time in your own product, and you sold the product to the first customer. But you can sell it to more customers if you decide to do so. So where the IP stays makes the whole difference in what even you are you. Are you a company selling time or a company selling games? On all of this path and all this ecosystem and environment, where can you turn on for help? Of course, besides the Google it, and actually you can Google it a lot, okay? And you can learn a lot. Who can help the most and help you speed up this learning process and narrow down all the decisions you need to make? The first ones, if you have good connections, or if you have friends or friends who have time, who are experienced founders, so business founders or experienced game makers, go ask them. Many of them who are not professionally, let's say, I'm professionally doing that, so I must be very wary of my time. I need to time slot it. I'm also happy to discuss with you, but I must be wary because I'm making a living out of that. But many of those people are not making a living of advising others and are happy to give some advice, okay? Then I'm more specific, but if you have this kind of people around you or know them, go ask them. Usually they'll be happy to let's say, not probably mentor, but at least give you some shortcuts. The second are hubs and incubators and accelerators. And this is, let's say, if getting money from people who have money to good opportunities, this is an industry, okay? And it's called the venture capital industry. And we have investors, angels, VCs, publishers, banks with loans, whatever. And in this industry, there is this kind of players who make a living out of this industry. So helping to get money to startups and making startups successful as much as possible. Hubs is, we could say, anything that resembles some chunk, some community. This is a community, this could be called a hub, okay? Technology Park is a hub. ABC is an accelerator and a hub because it has a community, okay? And then we have technology parks more or less in every major city in the Western world, okay? So you have communities of people who think the same way, or let's say think the same, who are diverse enough, but think about similar issues and problems. Then you have incubators. Incubators are the earliest stage where if you want to do your own business, or if you want to learn the very basics of what it means to build your own business, you go to incubators. It's fairly easy to get in. They provide quite long-term support, and it's the place where you can learn, if this is really what you want to even do, okay? And be at peace with yourself if this is what you want to do in the next, for your life, basically, okay? And in incubators, you might get some basic mentorships, so core level mentorship. You might get co-working space. You might get, again, a community of people. You might get even some money in some incubators, okay? And they might even already take some equity, depends. But the point is they bring you to a level where you're even proficient, or let's say, start being proficient of talking serious money, okay? And to investors and to this kind of world, okay? Publishers are a different story. You can go to a publisher if you have a good game. If you read on the webpage what the publisher requires, read, look a couple of YouTube videos how to talk with publisher, you can go to a publisher, okay? But for investors, it's a little bit different. So incubators bring you to that point where you know what you want to do in your life, you know what you can do with your product or not. I mean, or you have maybe some customers already, or at least you did market research. And then, and it takes, depends, even up to a couple of years, really depends, and maybe part-time. And then you can go in accelerators. This is what we are also positioning ourselves as an accelerator. But accelerator is also, accelerators, you already need to be fully committed. It's not a part-time thing anymore. And you need to have some capacity to, in a couple of months, really achieve some breakthrough. So this means either going to market, getting the first 100 customers or 10,000 players, or being able to raise 50,000 or 100,000 after 3 months. Okay, so in a limited time span. Okay, so these are different stages of your own personal beliefs about what you want to do in life or with that project, and the maturity of the project itself. Okay, those three. And the last chunk of it, who can help you? Once you get an investor on board, they will help you. Why? Because they want you to succeed. Okay. Once you persuade them that they bought a piece of your company, okay, they're in. They're in until your company exists. And those guys will try to provide as much help as possible, connections, resources, mentorship. To the extent that they can, they will support you. They will also be your mirror and reflection. And this is usually the best thing you can have in such an environment. Having around you people who say everything is the best is actually the worst. You need to have people around you who slap you, okay? And then maybe you have a couple of good friends when you can go have a little bit of carrot talk, Okay. To conclude, this is the final slide. So, if you want to do games for a living, okay, broadly speaking, there are 3 ways. You can get a job, you can get a more aggressive job, a less aggressive job. It's up to you how much higher salary you want. You can be a freelance, which is already, let's say, a step into the direction of being an entrepreneur, because you must source your deals, you must manage more stuff, you are the master of your own time and your own cash flow and burn rate, and maybe you want to hire 2 or 3 hands to help you out, and you may be assembling a studio. So freelance is the middle ground, and then, or let's say, if this is zero entrepreneurship, or let's say near zero, this is 1/3, and then if you want to do a business, okay, you should go and maximize the chances of this business being sustainable. So this is the step number 2, and the last step is make it big. Okay, so you can make a sustainable business with 5, 10 people, maybe with 3 people. It's again a valid decision. There are many small and medium businesses out there. It's completely okay. Not an investor case, but you can do it. And so you can do a sustainable business with a couple of people or a couple of 10 people, or you can go full in, all in, try to bring up the next unicorn, and go get that 1 million after 1 year, and then see what happens in 3 years. If it doesn't happen, okay, repeat. With the right mindset, you really strongly increase the chances of succeeding, and that's the thing. So if you repeat them long enough, and if you live long enough, then it can happen. Yeah. Okay, and that's it. That's it from my end. So if you have any questions, I know it was quite a broad topic. I deliberately didn't want to go into very much details because we could be here for hours and so on, But at least it gave you a bit of perspective where things stay, and maybe what resources you can seek further to read or to search or to Google them, or we can talk about that. You can ask me. I would be happy to take questions.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And as Tom said, now it's the Q&A time, and I'll ask Tom that if you can repeat the questions just for the stream, that if everybody can.
Cool. Good.
Thank you for the talk. I have a question regarding the relationship between the investor and the investee. Let's say you got the investor, and before you said that the investor is involved with you, it helps you. I'm curious to know how the investors approaches this, when they expect to get something in return. So do they do this actively, or when they get the return they want?
Yeah, good question. So the question is, when an investor invests in a founder, we usually call them founders, okay, what is the relationship between the two? How does it evolve, and what are the expectations from the investor? The question is, the answer is, there are many different kinds of investors, okay? And maybe you heard the words or the buzzword smart money, okay? You do get money from an investor, but ideally you get one that has a lot of time to devote only to you, okay? And that is extremely knowledgeable exactly about what you do. Okay? That would be the smartest money you can get, okay? Maybe you can get money which is from a person who is, I don't know, your uncle maybe, has no clue about the idea, but maybe comes in at the right time. It's not smart money, but it comes in at the right time, okay? So in this term, investor, it can be a family member, and then it's up to you what expectations you will set with your family member, But with let's say with institutional investors, what we call them, okay? So the institutions like funds, they have, definitely you will have some reporting schedule, maybe once a quarter, at least once a quarter usually, you will report back the financials, the progress, and all this stuff, okay? Very often it will be more frequent. This means that you might meet with an investor maybe on a weekly basis. It's quite frequent, usually at the beginning, maybe on a weekly basis, then maybe on a monthly basis, and you discuss with him, okay? You discuss with him how you're going according to plan. So when you ask about the expectations, you set them with your business plan. Okay, so you decide what expectations you want to set. The investor only says yes, no, at the end of the day. They might steer you later down the road, but the expectations were set by you in the pitch in the first place. Then it comes down to the individual personality of the investor. There are good investors and not so good investors, okay? Some investors are really experienced in how startups work, and they don't try to influence you too much because they know going too much down the rabbit hole is actually counterproductive. Okay, so they know how to keep the distance from the day-to-day decisions, so they recognize they're not aware of the day-to-day operation of the startup. Okay, that you might be more knowledgeable about that. Some investors, I'm not saying there is a rule of thumb, but let's say if there are more fresh investors going into startups, they might have these expectations skewed. They might feel that they have a lot more say in the startup than they should have, okay? And this is something that should be spotted by the founder already before. So you should do your due diligence on the investor as well before you approach them, and even during the whole conversation. It is buy-in from both sides. Julien from Phil Rouge always says this, it's a marriage, okay? You get to know each other, you wiggle a little bit, you dance a little bit, and then you make a marriage, okay? And it can end in a divorce, okay? But hopefully you don't aim for the divorce from day one, okay? So it actually goes both ways to handling expectations. Yeah.
Okay, first, thank you for the talk. It's business oriented, but it is, and I'm tired and sleepy, but it got me through. So
that's good.
So it's good. I got some, if not all the knowledge, all the scope of the valuable things that are still knowledge. Anyway, the question is, the publisher is a mirror, but can the publisher hinder the development of the game? Because, for example, one example is in the 90s, EA. Some guy, I don't know who exactly, but he was developing this game, and the publisher was, oh no, let's not do this, but okay, maybe, and so on and so on, and they were very unsure of it. And then the game got released, and it was successful, and the game is, well, it was almost cancelled, but the game is The Sims. So very, very successful series. So when can we say, okay, I'm better than the publishers because they are focused on the metrics, and maybe they don't dare to see beyond what the market is telling them. Maybe the market doesn't know what it wants yet.
Yeah, so it's true. It's a valid question. So to repeat it, the question was, if a publisher, by imposing their own rules or let's say their own restrictions, can actually hinder the success of a game or a business, and it holds the same way for investors. If they impose rules, they can hinder the development, or they can not allow development out of a certain path. Okay, and the answer, yes, of course, that can happen. And again, there is no silver bullet for that. Okay, of course. For the publisher's case, it goes very much what you sign in the contract with the publishers, how much leverage they have on your decisions, and how much, if they hold any intellectual property, hopefully, I mean, depends on the deal, of course. But yeah, it can happen. Also, the publishers make errors, of course, and they surely have to be more on the safe side because they're dealing with numbers than you personally. You personally can believe in whatever you wish and can go all in. And you screw it up, it's one person or one team or whatever, but you can go do the next thing then. But the publisher definitely has more mouths to feed, and they need to be sustainable beyond that one person. So yeah, you can really strongly believe that going against the flow will bring you somewhere, and it can bring you, and there are many cases like that where this happens. The thing is, from a perspective of someone who's experienced in the market, your odds are lower than somebody else, and that's why they might, reject you, or they might force you into something that you don't like or you don't feel is the right way. And this happens all the time. But the thing is, it's a game of odds. This doesn't mean you can't win with 1% chance. You can, And the same story applies to investors. It's actually a related question to what you asked before, okay? And those who are experienced in the market, investors, will not push too much their own agenda. They know that you have the boots on the ground. You are resolving the day-to-day problems. You should know better, And this should be their bet when they even go in there. So they did this bet, and now let it be. If they then fall back on this, it's not the best sign. But either way, you have these things in the contracts usually. Good. Thank you.
First of all, great one. Thanks.
Thanks.
So I have two questions. I'll go with the shorter one first, I guess. You were talking about the investor losing 90% of investments from companies. So I'm curious about the 90%. Is this just a failure from the perspective of the investor, or also from the companies themselves? So what is the state of those companies?
Yeah, thanks. So the question was, I mentioned before that 90% of investments of venture capital are failed investments, and the 10% need to make up for all of that. This is the economics of the business. So this was a generalization. And the question was, what happens really with those 90%? Is that a failure only from the investment standpoint, or also from the business or the founder's standpoint? And it's actually, it's a smooth transition, okay? So the 90%, and it's not always 90%. For example, the best accelerators in the world, they produce out with success rates between 30 and 40%. Okay, this is the world top is 40%, the best in the world. Okay, and so this means that they, again, based on their own definition, the company, the startup, will return back a multiplier. I don't know, maybe a factor of 20. At least, or 10 at least, on what was invested in. Okay, so this is the criteria of those 40% success. The remaining 60% doesn't mean that they fail completely, but they are, from an investment standpoint, not the optimal way of doing entrepreneurship. Why? They call them zombies often, okay? Because you put in a lot of money, you expect 10-time return, but they keep on living, maybe with a small, medium business, maybe with even 100 people employed, but they are not growing, not going anywhere. And the investor rather kill the project and retry with a 40% success and do unicorn instead, you know, in the next 2 years, instead of struggling for 5 to 10 years with that one zombie. Okay, so it's not that these companies necessarily fail, and oftentimes, yeah, the founders might become comfortable. It's enough. It's enough for them, and this is something that investors really don't want. You know, they don't want entrepreneurs that they feel it's enough. They should always strive for what they were aiming for. You know, they should. This is the mindset of the investor. And also, it is a lifestyle that is constantly pushing you out of the comfort zone, because this is what the investor needs, okay, to survive. So, in terms of investors' eyes, zombies are definitely not something very suboptimal, but it happens, yeah. And I will really speak by thumb, okay, but let's say, I don't know, 2/3 of those companies, they actually fail, maybe 1/3 becomes zombies, okay, for some period of time, but it would be better that they would close the project or liquidate, take out what is able to take out, and go do something else. You know. Second question.
First of all, to this about the zombies.
Yeah.
So, is there no practice like just put someone like a CEO or like a director to go and continue with that zombie company, and you go do like a fresh business, like to make it like a support pillar in a way?
Yeah. So the question was, okay, if you have a zombie company, if you could, the founders could put a manager and go do the new business. Yeah, you can do it, and it happens that oftentimes the founder doesn't want to let go. That it's still his baby, you know, or her baby. Yeah.
Okay, so the second question is more at the beginning. So you have like people, like students, they start on a passion and they do bootstrapping, like you said, if I understand correctly, bootstrapping is doing it on your own time, not getting paid, and not investing extra money. So you said that you search for investments when your funds get to zero. So basically, you decide when to stop bootstrapping and go and do a real business. So when are you, like, as a single person or as a small team, or when are you mature enough to do that transition?
Yeah, great question. So, question is about those who are starting, or still very early at the start of their project, maybe students who you always start at the beginning bootstrapping your own project. Whatever you are, entrepreneur or not, at the beginning it's you yourself who are doing the first research, and you are investing your time, basically bootstrapping until some certain moment. And the question was, when is the right moment, the right maturity to not bootstrap anymore and actually go seek investment? One thing is about if you're already an experienced entrepreneur and you know all the implications, you learned all there is to learn about the investment ecosystem, okay? The best time is when your business plan will say so. You will make a plan, how much money you need to transition to a certain stage, and you will make, in the optimal ideal case, the minimum amount of steps required before you are eligible to talk to an investor. Okay? And until that point, you will push it yourself or with your close circle of friends, doing it completely for free, or maybe even with your own money, paying outsourcing developers or designers. So this is if you already have the knowledge. Okay? If you don't have the knowledge yet, then also this let's say variable comes into play. So it's not just about the maturity of your project, but it's also about you yourself even understanding what you're going into. So I would say going into an incubator is or in any kind of such hubs, okay, where maybe a very technical or art or design-oriented person can get some business and financial knowledge or influence. Getting in these kind of environments can help you make this transition and understand these things. And then being able to decide, okay, now is the time, according to my business plan, that I should seek investment. Okay, and this maybe comes when you find out if we really want to make a $10 million business in 5 years. In the first year, we need to do that. Me and my friend will not be able to do that ourselves. We need 5 more people. If we want to get 5 more people and we don't have enough friends, we have to pay them. So now is the time to go for investment. This is the business plan that, backward engineer your vision down by years, down by months, and then you make the decision when to. And with getting to zero on your bank account, I mean, when you plan all this, when you have the zero funds, you should be getting the new round. No, so it's a it's a jigsaw. How is it called? It's not a jigsaw. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so it's a jigsaw. It's a jigsaw. Yeah, pattern how startups get funding. Every next dent should be higher, you know, and exactly for the point, because you want to have as much as material and proof when you go seek investment that you have the highest chances of persuading an investor, but not just persuading, also at the best possible terms, because you prove, the more things you prove, the less risk for the investor, okay, and the more they can give you, or for the lowest equity, because it's always the equation of betting risk versus investment.
A few questions from the stream. So first one is from Ivan, how to get funding like for unpopular games like spacing, Wingmans, and so on. And the second question is, do the same rules apply for non-game apps like ERP-like?
Yeah. I think they heard probably the question because you're close enough.
Yeah.
So how to get funds for games that are not so popular? Probably it will be hard. It might not be harder. Surely there are some funds who are quite agnostic on the games you present. Okay, and if you present a game that is let's say more out of the box or more out of mainstream, probably you will have less chances of making it successful because it's not mainstream, but also less competition pitching the same type of game. And also maybe this evens out at the end of the day. It's more important for you to make a case. Okay, at the end of the day, if there is no market for that, if it's financially not viable, then it's just not viable. Full stop. You know, if you want to do it as a passion, I love space simulations, by the way. You know, I really love them. You know, maybe you do it for passion, it's okay. But if it's not financially viable, you can't get money for that. If you can argument it is, then it's okay. You know, but this comes again to the, I said before, added value and thinking about what people really want and really need. Yeah, sometimes they actually don't want what they need or what they want, and you're creating a new genre, a new category. Okay, and this happens all the time. You know, so you are creating something that people didn't even know they would like or want, and you position it and you win. It's a big bet, but it can happen, and it happens all the time. Although I just read recently, a couple of days ago, an article. Those companies, not just about games, but software and startups in general, those who are the first movers, the first that create a category, are usually not then the most successful companies in that category. Almost always there comes a company a couple of years behind afterwards, which then make it big, because you're really the pioneer of a new category. You can be proud of that, but it's really tough. So the study showed that it's more financially viable competing in existing categories, with really strong competitive advantage, than doing something completely new. Okay, so but this is one study, so this could be up to debate. Okay? And the second part of the question was if this applies to not just to games but to other stuff. Yeah, it's the same story. So basically, I'm applying the principles from VC world and from investing world also to games, because it's the same metrics that define success. Okay, and I didn't even mention about that. The team is the one in such early stages. It's the one that 80% defines the decisions of investors, and 80%, 90, whatever you want to call it, defines whether this is going to succeed or not. And I will just elaborate on this. You can imagine till when is the team the most important thing in a company, startup, game dev studio, whatever. Imagine taking out the team and completely replacing it. Would that business or game or studio still function? Okay. How big must it be to endure such? I mean the management, the leading team, okay, the founders team. how big must the business be that it can survive taking out whole of top management and all the founders and replacing them with something some different managers. The company must be quite mature already to be able to survive something like that. And until that point, the team is the one that's most important. Okay? But that doesn't mean that when you go pitch, you put a team slide, and this makes it work. You know, with everything you communicate, it reflects you and your capabilities. Okay, with all your planning, all your research, with all your vision, motivation, and ideas, all of that is a reflection of you, and that's how you, as the team, are being judged by a investor, publisher, or any kind of business partner that needs to lower the risk by even talking with you.
The next question is, what are the consequences if you don't succeed after 3 years, for example? And the second question also is, how are you as an accelerator making money?
Yeah, so the first one is, what happens if, very completely separate question.
Yeah.
What happens if you don't succeed, if you get an investment and you don't succeed in a couple of years? Usually not much, okay? If you have a healthy relationship with the investment, if you report it regularly, if you behave, let's say, like a normal person and you try to do your best, you call the day with the investor, say it's time to kill the project, you kill it, no harm done, and you go on to the next one, okay? And this is practice. This is what happens, we said, 90% or let's say 50% of the time, and it's completely normal. So it's just about how well of the terms you have communication with those who gave you money to build your dreams, okay? And they believed in you and in your dreams, and if you are fair enough to them, it's fair enough back, you know, it's fair back. There can be problems if you use that money to put in your pocket and go away. Then you are legally, they can prosecute you, of course. But this happens when you go into millions, okay? Because for numbers below that, okay, there might be one investor that you really hit the nerve, you know, and they will chase you for that, okay? But otherwise, it's just not worth. You destroy your reputation. You're never going to get any investment anywhere else. Okay, any partner who knows about you will never work with you again. You know? So basically, you just destroyed in your lifetime a big window, a big range of opportunities you would have otherwise. So it's not the very wise thing to do. You know? No, but you know, if you have Mount Gox and you have $1 billion or so, and you take the $1 billion. You don't care about the opportunities in life anymore. You know, but when you have a company and $1 billion on a bank account, it doesn't work like this. That's why we have a regulation in normal financial institutions, unlike crypto, which doesn't have yet. Okay, the second question was how accelerators make a living. Accelerators work, so there is 2 ways. Okay, accelerators usually put in some early money. Accelerators invest in money and know-how. So mentors, consultants, and money, okay? And for this money, they get back a percentage of your company. And this percentage comes back to the accelerator quite a couple of years later, okay? So they need to bridge this time span before you exit, or maybe a much bigger investment round comes in, which is also normal, and at that point, they sell their share, and they get out some multiplier of the value. So it's very similar how investors work. It's just accelerators usually come in a chunk of your lifetime as a startup, as a company, and it's defined in the accelerator strategy. When do they want to exit from the equity structure? When do they want to sell? So this is the profit they make. You know? And yeah, and like I said, they invest in you the money and the time. And some invest just the time. So this is how we operate. We don't invest money yet. We have partners who do invest money, but we invest our time for a low fee, you know, and then we count that it will pay back once you get the next round of financing, once you get the first customers and you get revenue. This is how we operate. You know? So you have this kind of type of, and incubators work in a similar manner if they work for equity. Oftentimes incubators are state funded, and they so they can offer their services for free. But I would say, because that also then the quality, or let's say, I won't say the quality, but the level of engagement they can afford is also lower. They can't go so much deeper in your specifics. They can't bring in such highly expert counselors, you know, but you might get, you know, a very cheap co-working space for that. So it comes in different stages. So incubators are more like popularizers of entrepreneurship and providing, you know, a place where you can foster this passion. Accelerators is where the real business starts of fundraising and startups.
Maybe ask a question here, like what are like some red flags that you saw like when somebody like pitched you like a company or like a project? Or like what are you looking like when like somebody like hands you like a pitch deck, like what are you like looking at?
So question, what are we looking at when they pitch us, and what are the red flags? There is actually this world. Actually, it's quite structured. Okay, you can go Google it and you will find a list of 30 red flags, and it might feel funny, but it actually reflects the personality of the people that are talking to you, and are really red flags when you think about it in a common sense. So, for example, one red flag immediately is arrogance. Okay, arrogance. Why? Because this means that the person is feels that he's smarter than you, and this means that whatever's going to happen, you won't be able to convey any point through. You know? So you have an extremely high risk of believing exactly what that person says, you know, and if it's not like that, you don't have any room for maneuvering. You know? So arrogance is definitely one red flag. And this is probably the main one, okay? Because if a person is willing to learn and is, you know, it doesn't need to be humble in the sense, you know, but it's if you can see the passion, the openness, the open-mindedness, and you can talk with that person normally, then it's okay, it's fine, you know. Then there is a ton of standard red flags, okay? But the second one we also see often, especially in the video game industry, is these expectations, okay? So what do you perceive and what's different between a publisher and an investor? Do you understand that after half a year you can't come to the investor and ask him for the same amount of money again, you know? Do you understand that you must build a business which is this much bigger? Yeah, but I don't want to. But then we can't help you. Or please help me, but I can't help you. You know, and also the expectations in terms of how much you value your own business. Okay, there are rules how you value your own business, and even if these rules they call it an art. Okay, it's evaluating startups. It's an art because it's very fluid. But you again have data from the market. You see for what value startups were getting, you know, investments after a certain, let's say, maturity, or after 1 year, 2 years, and you can look at those distributions and the benchmarks. And if you see that no one startup ever, after 3 months of setting out the operations, was valued at 10 million, it was. But let's put that aside, okay? But there is nearly no startup in the world. You know, you can decide that you are worth 10 million. It's your arbitrary decision how much you feel you're worth. It's just if you are able to argument that to me and persuade me if that is really the case. You know. So these are, let's say, two red flags that we often see here. Yeah, and this means not also distinguish between publishers and investors pitching games when they should be pitching companies. And this is a mutual disqualifier. We can't help them.
Any more questions?
Yes, it says behind you, founder. Does the founder also have an investor?
We ourselves.
Yes.
You mean? Yeah. So the question was, I'm the founder of Reveris Startup Accelerator, and if we also have an investor. Yeah, both. We also have an investor in us. I also personally invested in us. Okay. Also in this space that we built it. Okay. I mean, built it. Yeah. Renovated it. Yeah. So we have. You know, there is also the first round of investment is called the triple F: family, friends, and fools. Okay, and this is the first round of investment. Okay, and also for Reveris, The first round came from family friends, but we also got yeah, you took the word out of my mouth. Yeah. We got the first external partners, and this is when I said publishers and investors are your mirror. This is when I decided I'm going to quit my very well-paid job and go work for minimal pay until so many years down the road, it will pay back. But it's already paying back in so many other ways that I didn't even imagine 1 year ago. I was kind of knowing what I was getting into, but it's even better.
You mentioned different rounds of funding. For example, let's say in the first round, you give 50% equity, doesn't matter. Then in the next round, how do you divide? Let's say they want 30%. Do they get, like, do I have to, like, the founder gives 15 and the company that invested gives 15, or how does that work?
Yeah. So the question was, how much equity goes away at each funding round, okay? And what are the, let's say, how does this work? Who gives this equity away? And again, excellent question. There are rules. There are rules, quite well-defined rules, because otherwise the logic doesn't work out. And the thing is, the management team, the founding team, must have the majority stake in the company for them to be motivated to keep working on that one vision, that idea. Because maybe you realize after 2 years, okay, but I'm 10% owner and 90% I'm working for somebody else. Why should I be doing it? And you don't want this to happen. Or let's say this will inevitably happen when you go really into millions and millions of investment, but you want this to happen later, or let's say as late as possible. That's why every percentage of your equity that you manage to hold on to yourself. Now, I'm not saying scrutinize all your friends and whatever. No, but there are rules, healthy rules, how much equity is healthy to be given away at each individual round of financing, okay? And these rules are, these percentages differ between US and Europe, but we're talking about 10 to 20% giving away at each round of financing, okay? And this means the first to family and friends, you gave, I don't know, 10%, and then all of them are in the same boat. And when the next investor comes in with a stronger investment, maybe the investor gets 20, and the remaining, the previous owners, all of them will shrink to 80%. So all of them will lose the same. There are also then exclusive clause where somebody might go in and say, we have 5% permanent. Okay, this happens. There must be a really strong argument for this to happen. Okay, because otherwise it is unhealthy that somebody is keeping a fixed, for something that they did very far away in the past, they're keeping a fixed amount. Everybody else is getting diluted, but except for them. Why, really? Why are you more than the rest of the founders that you're not losing your share, diluting it? So these rules, 10 to 20%, and and then when the company is, let's say, so big, and we're talking maybe about 100 or 500 million euro value company, when you are the founder and maybe you have only 10% in there, but only 10% in such a company is already 50 million, So you're still motivated and passionate to keep it pushing once it's big enough, And the last part of this equation is, if you can't dilute more than, or let's say the healthy way of diluting a company is maximum 20%, so 20% are already high, okay? But let's say if it's maximum 20%, this means how much money you can get at a specific round is defined by the value of your company. If you want to get 200,000, okay, your company must be valued at least 1 million, right? And for a company to be valued at least 1 million, you have to prove, or you had to prove, this and this and this and that, and such amount of customers and such amount of revenue and so on. And if you don't prove it, you can't raise. So you see, it's all mathematics. At the end of the day, it all makes sense. Your results define the value of your company. The value of your company defines how much you can raise. and when you'll be able to raise next round. And all this needs to come very well together in the business plan, that it happens at exactly the right time in the ideal case.
Two more questions from the stream. So, any thoughts or tips on crowdfunding, and when and why should you do it, or are there any good other alternatives to crowdfunding?
Okay, so yeah, the question, I think you heard it. Disclaimer, I'm not an expert of crowdfunding, so I can't say much about that, okay, except for what I mentioned at the beginning, okay. Crowdfunding is, for games, it's totally viable. It is viable in general for products where you can really personally address the individual, the end customer. It doesn't work for B2B. It can hardly work for business to business, no. But when there is a mass market of end customers, and when you can appeal them in such a way that they become your investor. So let's say they loan you money ahead of time, okay? Then this can work. And but as I said earlier, you shouldn't use crowdfunding for market research. You shouldn't use it to build your community. You should have a community, and you should expect that you'll be throwing money at a crowdfunding campaign really strongly, first producing the materials that are engaging and producing, you know, the whole advertisement and banners and whatnot, and paying for that. And then basically it's you acquire users to give you money in advance, and you pay something to acquire them. When you hope that the calculation is positive, that you will get back more than you paid for one user to give you the money in advance. So it is basically an exercise before launching the game. It is a validation, like an investor is a validation. If you get investment, your validation that you convince someone who's experienced and they give you money. It is a validation here that people are willing to pay you, but you should do some research before that. Okay? This is the most I can say. I have a book here. Maybe we can talk later, because he just now delved all into crowdfunding, so we can talk about that. Yeah.
Thank you. And next question is, if metrics and numbers are the most important information for investors, what is the most important information for publishers?
It's even more, I would say, even more. The investors will still look at metrics and numbers as a way that reflects your capabilities. Okay, it reflects let's say, if there is a problem that you are solving, if the market is big enough, if people are willing to buy, that will prove that, okay? But it also proves that you can deliver what you promised. So this is what numbers show. So at the end of the day, the investor is really just interested, is there potential in what you're selling to me, and if you can do it, okay? And they still assess that through numbers. Publishers, depends on publisher to publisher. Some publishers are also going much more into believing in the team. So they're also starting to look more and more in, can this team deliver, and can we make a long-term relationship with this team? Okay, so they are starting to behave a little bit more like investors, and in some investors like publishers. But for publishers, they are really focused on that one specific game. That is the one thing that they're betting on in that very moment. It might be that you are a good team and we want more work down the road, but today we are deciding whether this game will make sense or not, okay? And this game can be compared to the benchmarks of similar games. If it's something very exotic, maybe they're willing to give it a go. If they are this kind of publisher that is willing to risk more, you know. But this is where the buck stops with them. You know? It really must be, the numbers must align. So the publishers actually are more heavy probably on the KPIs, you know, than investors. But it's a different level. It's hard to compare.
Thank you. And one more, funding often depends on you, on your ability to provide a hit game. What funding options are available to those who want to build a game that's only a niche game?
I think this was a similar question, or please correct me in chat if it's not a similar question as before. So before the question was, what if you are making a game that is not mainstream, that is unpopular, and again, I love space themes. Yeah, and how can you get money for a niche game. I know that there are some publishers who are on the lookout for exotic games, so you just need to find the right one. Okay, there are flavors of entrepreneurs, there are flavors of game producers and developers, and there are flavors of investors and publishers, and there are some that are agnostic. And like I said before, you can get it if you can prove that there is enough desire for such a game, and if there is not, then it's not a viable thing to market.
I think we're gonna take one last more, or then finish.
So between founders and publishers, if in the game industry you start with publisher, is there a transition from publisher to founder, and what is this transition?
If it's a transition from publisher to founder, I'm not sure if I understand the question. You mean from
Funding.
You mean from publishing
Yeah.
from publisher to investor?
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, looking from the other perspective, you can be a publisher and you can invest in game as a publisher, or you can become an investor and invest into companies. I would say these are two rather, there is no, let's say, by the book transition, okay? It's not a path usually, but it's two different business models. It can be a hybrid of one or the other. And for example, I think games were not attracting a lot of venture capital, so of investors, until the last couple of years, okay? And this is now becoming really big also among investors to start investing into more and more things like publishers invest. Still not individual games, but in small teams of people who would not be regarded a company by a standard investor, okay? But so as I would say, it's transitioning more from the traditional investing, or let's say investing in other areas, okay, towards being more publisher-like, because they feel knowledgeable enough. Those people are really experienced. They usually had a lot of success, exits, and whatnot, and that's why they have now the capital to invest back, and they feel knowledgeable and confident enough to behave more like publishers, even if they are, an investor, betting on a company that doesn't look like a company yet, but the games might be really good, and they're willing to take the bet that those guys will be able to still create a company out of it, and it's happening. And actually, as a really good up point, a positive point, here in the region, this region and the Balkans and the Eastern Balkans are underserved when it comes to money for games. Okay, there is less capital than in Europe, Western Europe, and in US. And the positive side is that there are venture funds now that are interested into getting here in the region. Okay, we had, I don't know if you heard, 3/4 investment in Chess Universe here in Slovenia from Transcend Fund from US. It's for 3/4 million. Cool, like this. First investment in this part of Europe, 3/4 million. Here you go. But okay, some of the best minds in Slovenia have been involved in that project in terms of video game industry. There is Transcend is looking in the region. There is the Norwegian, Danish Sisu Game Ventures, which is also actually, they reached out to Rock and Slovenia Games, they reached out to us, they reached out to Croatian Game Development Alliance. They're scouting and researching the region if there is potential. Flourish Capital, they are a standard. They're a software-focused venture capital fund. They have 50 million in Zagreb, but they're very open to listen to game developers, and they see opportunity there. And that's why also they see us as being really able to help them there. But they're listening to games instead of companies, and they don't know what to do with that. They ask, guys, what can we do with all these guys pitching games? And so there is interest, there is willingness to invest. I think we just need to elevate a little bit these expectations and actually the ambition.
Just a quick question. I know you've talked for a long time, but it's really...
I'm refreshing now, thanks.
Yeah, you refresh our time. It's just a follow-up to what he was asking. So is it viable to get an investor and build a product and then get a publisher for the product? Is that viable?
Yeah, definitely. And so the question was, is it viable to get an investor, then build the product or the game, and then get a publisher for that game? And yeah, definitely. And this is, I would say, I was emphasizing earlier lean business. Lean business means do things with as low cost as possible, as optimal as possible. If you can outsource stuff, like a publishing side of the business, if that's viable for the first 2 tests that you do in the market, it's better than hiring 5 people on the team because the costs go high and you spend time hiring them. Okay, do that. So using a publisher becomes part of your day-to-day operation, and using a publisher gets into your business plan as, yeah, we will use this amount of money to develop the game. This is what, or the first 2 games and the company around it. But for each game, we will give 40% of the revenues to the publisher instead of hiring the people in-house. It's completely legit decision. It works charms.
So as long as it's in the business model and the investor
Yeah.
knows about it.
Exactly. The publisher and the investor are not competing at all. Not at all, because the publisher is your, let's say, operational day-to-day business partner. Yeah.
You have to disclose it to the publisher as well, that you have an investor with that amount.
If the publisher has wishes to become also an equity holder or might buy a chunk of your company, okay, so kind of behave a bit like an investor too, then sooner or later they will find this out, okay? So you should communicate this up front. But otherwise, usually the publisher doesn't care, really, because the publisher cares about that one game. But still, like I said, still makes a difference if you come to a publisher, look, we have a company that's producing games and we are backed by investors, you know? Even if it's our first game, it's a completely different perspective if you come from, you know, we are 3 guys looking for something. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. That was an amazing talk. I think we could talk even more hours about this. But I think now it's time for unofficial part, for the drinks. And if you want to follow Slovenia Games, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Discord. Here they will post about upcoming events, conference, and so on.
Conference.
Yes, conference. This is like early announcement. It will happen 16th of October. If everything goes according to plan, and if there are no lockdowns, but we'll see shortly. Thank you for coming. I started with like new faces. I want to talk to you all, so yeah, let's go grab some drinks.
Thanks.